Hello YouTube, this is Charles and I'm back with another Kamen Rider Den-O review. This time I'm going to be looking at the combination armament Dengasher, the primary weapon system for Kamen Rider Den-O. And when I say primary, I mean this thing forms roughly 75% of his attacks, and powers come from it. Attack powers at least. Certain attack abilities and other things come from the Imagine themselves, but for the most part, they rely on this to actually channel their energy and make full use of their abilities. And the Den-gasher is made up of, well, two sets really. Down here in the foreground, you see are the belt or the individual weapon parts. See. And just in case you get confused, like on the Kabuto's belt, I'm not sure if it's easy to make out right now, but right there is an R. Can't really make it out too well. There it is. Okay. An R. And on the back of this one, of course, is an L. So you have R and L. Now, how these of course are the points to which the 4 units in the back attach. And they attach, well, I'll show you. I'll show you on them, but first let's look at them. Sorry. Okay. These are the 4 modules and parts of the system. You have Module 1, the sword part, Module 2, the handle, Module 3, the axe, and Module 4, the gun. Let's look at these guys a little bit more closely individually. We'll start with Module 1, the sword. Okay. This set, of course, is modeled after a high-speed train, just like Den-O himself, and none reflects that better than this part. As you can see, it still has the actual little plastic part attached to it, the plastic wrapping on it. I haven't removed it. Now, it's not going to come out real well because there's the lighting in here, but this right here is actually a very deep red, not black as it's coming across on camera. It does have a nice red sticker there. Down here you see the screw holes, these, and of course this. Now this is actually important, and I'll get and explain why now. These units, of course, all attach to each other, and they do so by means of these little nubby parts right here, which are kind of a transparent, or well, not really transparent, but kind of a clearish dark blue plastic. You can see there's one on either side. These squeeze in and out like this. But for practical purposes, getting them to attach and release, you press this setup here, which is easier to hold, and you press them in and they move in and out. Of course, this is in the middle here. It has a piece of softer plastic, which runs right down the middle. Okay, now on this side right here, and on the, well, it's on the side for each of them. Which side it is depends on which holster it's supposed to go in. You have one of these tabs right here, and what you do is you take your respective holster and you just slide it in. Just like this. Camera back a little bit just to get this in frame. Okay. And once you have them all attached, you can come around here on the other side. You can take this strap and hang it on the belt, which is a neat way of carrying these things. But that's pretty much all it's good for. Alright. Now, set those to the side, set him to the side since we've looked at him. There's the belt in the background. Let's zoom in and look on the handle part right here. This is a bit heavier than the other parts because it has all of the electronics in it. And yes, it does have a handle here, but this will come important later. On-off switch, of course. The LED. Okay, and here is where the batteries go. It is a screw, it's not a push pin, so I'm gonna have to use a screwdriver to do this one. Unlike some of the other parts, the LED, of course, is here and here. It does not have the push tabs because, well, really it's not supposed to. It has other functions going on. You see, it's very nice. Yep, right here, if I can zoom in a little bit. Is the trademark stamp, Bandai 2006, made in China. I presume that's the same thing in Japanese. So zoom out, and we'll look at section 3, the axe, which is this one. Yeah, this one's got a tiny bit of a flaw, but I don't know if it's just mine or if it's something that occurs to all of them, so I'll save that for a bit. As you can see, again, it has the release valves here. Plenty of anchoring. It also has this part up here, but of course that's obviously used for specific forms, so we'll get to that in a little bit. And finally, module 4, the gun, as it's described. And there are different ways of looking at this, but yeah, it does mostly resemble a gun barrel for obvious reasons. Again, it has the release tabs, which are right here. See, it's got these nice little side barrels. Okay, so using these 4 parts, you can create up to 5 different weapons. And I know most of you are going, well, what's the 5th? I only know 4. Well, I'll show the 5th off last. But first we want to combine this into sword form, which is the first form we see it take in the show. However, in order to do that, well, we have to do some prep work with this guy first. What you want to do is take the tip here and rotate it down, and you'll reveal a sword point. This is fairly soft, rubbery plastic. I'm not really using a lot of force. I don't know if this is ABS or PVC. I'm not sure. I'm not sure of my plastics. Not the plastic addict. Heyo. But nor my CDX. So you're just gonna have to bear with me on that. Okay. What you want to do next is take portion 3, the axe, and using the connection points, you want to connect the two. There you go. Nice, good, strong connection right there. Then you want to take the last piece, the handle, obviously, and using the connection points, again, connect it in. Okay, so we're 3/4 of the way there. We just need to add this piece. Well, this is where this little flaw for this one comes into play. See, the axe form on it has a pair of, if I can get them to pop out, doors. And one of mine is extremely flippy. I mean, it's, of course now it's going to cooperate because it's on camera, much like a car. Right. But in any case, you want to flip them up. Then you want to take the gun barrel, face it like this, with the metallic finisher down. You want to anchor it like that, and then each of these doors has a set of tabs and a circular indentation. Has each of the train cars, if you noticed, and you just want to flip them around and anchor it in place. And when you do so, you have created the Kamen Rider Den-O Den-gasher sword form, which is used by Momotaros when he has control. This is actually a pretty good length of a sword here. I happen to have a tape measure handy, fortuitously, and I'm going to measure this from the tip of the sword, if I can get it to stop moving or let it fall. And right there is the edge of the handle. So yeah, and if you can tell, 19 inches. He's most impressive. Now, Momotaros, when he possesses Nogami, gives him a very punkish appearance. He dresses in a leather coat. His hair is spiked up via a wig, I believe. They give him a shock or a streak of red hair. He's very rude and ill-mannered. He is not a trained fighter, although he does beat the hell out of the gang that assaulted Nogami in the first episode. And he is somewhat violent, but Nogami is able to restrain him. He does have a few other flaws, like he's scared of dogs, noticeably a Chihuahua. In sword form, it's not his base form, but it's his primary form, because it doesn't really have any of the huge weaknesses that the other forms do. It has a pretty good armor, good speed, very mobile, and the finisher is actually a little bit, can be both ranged and in your face. For the finisher, he does a full charge with the Rider Pass, and then the tip of the sword, which is elongated, is much larger and far more impressive on the show, will fly off, and he can wield this thing kind of like a whip sword and use it to cut through the Imagine, killing them. It's actually a very well thought out and kind of cool finisher, except that for whatever reason Momotaros hates the number 4 and deems it not cool enough. So when he's performing it, he names his finisher version 1, version 2, version 3, version 5, special version. At the end of the show, he has final version, which combines the abilities of the other Taros, I'm sorry, against the Death Imagine. And of course, in Kamen Rider Decade, we see the Decade version, which utilizes this and poor Kuga to hilarious but effective results. But that's really all you can do with this form, although there is one other thing. Okay, the lights and sounds, which are here, you flip this on, and there is the light. The speaker is right here, of course, and here is the trigger. So if I can do this on camera. Oh, it doesn't have the LED on its side. So there you go. Some pretty generic sound effects. And I'm just going to turn that off to save the battery power. So that's sword form. Let's look at this thing in rod form. And in order to do that, we have to disassemble this thing. So I'm going to pause, break it back down into component parts, and then reassemble in rod. And I'm back. So we've broken this thing back down to its 4 component pieces, and we want to go to rod form. So to do that, we'll need this piece first, and we're going to take the handle and the axe and push them gently into the back because we don't need them right away. You want to come up here, take the gun part, and attach. And I'm going to give as close up as I can of the actual attachment this time around. So again, press the tabs in, release, and you have a fairly strong connection. I have to save this thing. Next, you want to come back down to the end here. Of course, now you're going to flake out. And utilize the tabs. And plug in the axe part right there. And finally, you want to come down again to the end of the axe. Let's get a really good look at this connection joint. Press. And fight. There. Okay. You zoom all the way out, and I have to move the camera back physically, and you get the rod form, which is used by Yorotaros. Yorotaros, when he possesses Nogami, makes him the ultimate, well, not the ultimate, but a penultimate liar and charmer, smooth man. Noticeably, he charms pretty much any woman he really attempts to, except for Hana, who punches him. And he's very smooth, as the people say. His appearance is much more well-groomed. He has a decidedly high-fashion look. He usually wears a pair of sunglasses, or not a pair of sunglasses, a pair of eyeglasses with clear lenses. And there is a streak of blue hair mixed in with his own. But, yeah. Yorotaros primarily possesses Nogami for social interaction. Rod form itself is not a form we see used too often because Yorotaros doesn't like fighting. However, when things have to become aquatic or even underwater, he usually will be called on to take out his fishing pole. For lengthwise, this one is a little bit longer than the sword was. I'm going to basically try and measure it here again, if I can get it to hang in there. Alright. And it's going to come out at just short of, well, that didn't come out right, but about just short of 24 inches, so a little under 2 feet for this thing. Now, this rod has a number of different callbacks in it. For starters, it can be used as a normal metal combat rod, like Kamen Rider Kuga's Dragon form, or Kamen Rider Agito's Storm form. It can also be used as a fishing rod, which is why it has the little flywheel here. The final form it can be used for has a harpoon. And this is part of the full charge. Yotaro's actually has multiple versions of his finisher as well. Normally, when he does a full charge, he will charge the energy into this and then grip it in his hand like so. Well, again, this is much longer to show, so he probably grips it just back behind this and chuck it. Because he has a considerably better aim than Momo, the rod will impale the Imagin and create a target, holding it in place long enough for a rod form to deliver a standard rider kick. Now there is a variation of that where he casually flings this thing at the Imagin, usually when it's moving or charging him. The Imagin is stunned and he can just deliver a standing side kick to destroy it. And Yotaro's himself, along with Momotaro's, who have access to their finishers in their just Imagin form, Momotaro's will just do a straight head-to-toe slash. What it is, Yotaro's will hurl a spear into the Imagin and then do like a running slide kick into the guy and destroy him. Rod form does have some advantages over sword form. For starters, of course, it's the only one that's actually capable underwater that can fight, and it has, I think, slightly more mobility. He primarily uses kicks in this form, so he can, has hinted at in his finisher, of course. So you'll see him kicking people as he assembles the Den-gasher into its rod form. Yeah, that will happen a lot. And it's a good form. It's just a shame we don't see it very often, but you know, it's Yotaro's. What are you gonna do? Just to show off the sound effects again, and there you go. Now I'm going to pause and break this down into its component parts so we can look at axe form. And I'm back to look at axe form, the primary weapon of Kintaro's. Kintaro's, of course, is the third Imagin. He is all brute force and strength. When he possesses Nogami, he becomes very traditional. He is often fond of dressing in samurai garb. His hair gets wild, not quite as wild as Momotaro's version, and there's a streak of yellow in it. He also wears a I know it's not officially called a ponytail, but there's like a hair piece of his hair that hangs down, and it appears to be an extension, of course. While possessing Nogami, Kintaro's greatly enhances his strength to the point where he can literally run through walls and fling people around. If you've watched the Kamen Rider Den-O Climax Deca movie, which guest stars Kamen Rider Kiva, there's a pretty good fight scene where the Kintaro's possessed Nogami takes on the human head villain and just literally throws him around the area and just kicks his ass basically by himself. Kintaro's and axe form are the brute force. He's by far the best pure combatant, and axe form reflects that. He has the most armor. His weapon's probably the deadliest once up close. Against the single target, he's probably the best choice. I'm trying to say. Unfortunately, he's not very fast, and while he's accurate, he can't really move around that well, so if he has to take on multiple enemies, he suffers. He does have ways around that. His finisher is called Dynamic Chop, and essentially what happens is it has two variations. Against a single opponent, he will strike them and stun them with a palm thrust, and then execute the full charge, hurl the axe straight up in the air, leap, grab the axe at its, I guess you would say, its highest point, and then come straight down of his, kind of his legs splayed out like a split, sort of, and cut through people and trees, as the rabbit Imagine finds out, unfortunately, to kill it. The other variation is one used against multiple weaker enemies, where he does a full charge and then basically spins around in a circle and cuts through anybody he touches. So there's that. Alright, sorry about that, but now we're going to put this together in its axe form. In order to do that, we don't need the handle right away, and we don't need the gun right away. We do need the axe portion and the sword portion. And what you want to do with them is line them up like this, flip the doors around, of course, to anchor everything in place. Then you want to take the gun barrel part, or what will be the gun barrel, and connect it like this, right? Come on, right, there you go. Alright. You want to take the actual handle part and, using the connection tabs, there you go. An axe, almost. You have one more part to do. Ready? Here it is. Take this part, pull it out. There you go. There is your axe. Again, this thing is big, so I'm having to zoom out as much as I can, and even then I can't really get it all in frame. This is actually a pretty good size axe. If I had one of the other roleplay weapons loose, I would be tempted to compare the two, but I don't, because they're all packed away again. Again, in terms of length, just over 19 inches, so about the same size as the sword form. It holds together okay. It's not as strong as some of the other forms at staying together, but it's a decent form. Of course, in the show, when he assembles it all, the axe blade is much larger and much more impressive, but, you know, for a roleplay weapon, this is actually not pretty good. Alright, so there's the axe. Now I'm going to break this thing down again, and we'll look at the final weapon. So I'll be right back. And we're back to look at the gun form of the Dengasher and Ryutaro's. Ryutaro's has the most power, but he's also, because he's so childlike, he's most prone to abusing that power. When he possesses Nogami, Nogami can breakdance. And, well, he also comes with his own troupe of backup dancers. Japanese break dancers. Yeah, it's just as strange as you think it sounds. He does have hair. He also wears a hat in this form, with the purple streak of hair being something that usually hangs down from that hat. The breakdancing is actually kind of important, because if I remember correctly, the casting for the main character for Nogami, the actor actually does his own breakdancing and had to breakdance. In terms of other combat abilities, he really doesn't have any besides himself. When he's in gun form, he has pretty good mobility. Probably a little, at least on par with Sword, maybe better. I don't think he's as mobile as Rod. That sounded horrible. Unfortunately, the one big downside to being in gun form is that his accuracy is shit. I can't remember which of the aerial bots Dionysus, Silverbolt, Simon said couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. That when he shot, everybody ducks. But that's essentially what Ryutaro's does. he has hideously bad accuracy, and his finisher, the wild shot, is devastating if it hits, but it's very prone to not hitting. For the full charge sequence, there is something kind of interesting in that the two reflective parts, when the armor forms, he has these kind of like eyes that appear above his head, on his not above his heads, appear above each of his shoulders, and those orbs or eyes sort of like will refine the energy and then channel it down into a ball to be, well, not a ball, but sort of channel it through and enhance the gun barrel, the gun discharge. That's what I'm trying to say. So let's assemble this thing into the gun. To do that, we're going to push, just like with axe, starting with, we're going to push those two parts out of the way, and we're going to start with the axe, blade, and this, except we're not going to do what we did last time. We're going to assemble it like this, I think. Nope. Yeah, we're going to assemble it kind of like this. So right there, it kind of looks like the axe, but it's not. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the gun barrel and attach it like that. It's starting to look like a weapon. Finally, we're going to come in here and take the handle and attach it down here. If we can get that on there. There. And there you go. The Dengasher in its gun form. This part's pretty useless, but it's there. On switch. Pistol sound effects this time. Gun form, of the four forms this thing is used for in the show primarily, I like gun form the best because it looks the best as a toy, even though it's not my favorite form. It's still a pretty cool looking blaster in my opinion, especially if you look down here at the barrel. You can actually see a sight line and everything. So let's look at the four primary forms, but what about that fifth form I mentioned? Well, believe it or not, I think we can go to it right from, yeah, we can go to it right from this. However, in order to do that, we have to split this thing in half. Splitting it in half and extending the blade, we get a hand axe and a boomerang. What uses these? Wing form. Wing form is the movie exclusive form for Kamen Rider Den-O, made possible by the appearance of Sig, who is the fifth Imagine. Sig is an incredibly pompous, arrogant Imagine. In the movie, he comes back and forms a contract with an unborn baby, I believe. Of course, once the baby is born, it doesn't remember the contract, and he's kind of stuck. He does end up possessing Nogami, because that's pretty much what everyone does. And Nogami takes on a very odd appearance and becomes very vain and very arrogant. In combat, Sig will henshin to wing form. And wing form is pretty fast, pretty mobile, and it utilizes these two weapons. It will he will full charge like the other Imagine, and then he first thing he does is he will hurl this boomerang at the monster, and then he uses the hand, and then he hurls the hand axe at it. The hand axe will strike, and he will literally grab it and try and rip it out of the Imagine just as the boomerang strikes again. And kills. The Imagine, of course, will explode. His saying is "Advent" and "Kneel before me." Sig is not really one of my favorite characters. It is cool, though, if you've watched Decade or even some of the other, can't remember the name of the other Den-O movie, but he eventually joins the others and he forms Super Climax form. So there you go. And that will do it for me on the Den-gasher. It is 5 weapons in 1. Interestingly enough, Toei has not really revisited this concept, despite this being the 5th year of anniversary of Den-O. Instead, opting to give us mini switches. Personally, I think this is a very underrated weapon. If you're a Kamen Rider collector, if you're a Den-O fan, or if you're just a fan of things that, get a lot more variety out of than you think, the Den-gasher gets one of my higher recommendations simply because it does all these things. It gives you, 5 different modes, and lots of little combinations. Granted, it doesn't have a lot of the other bells and whistles that some of the other sets do. It is kind of plain to look at because it's based off a train, but still, in terms of playability, I think it's one of the stronger pieces Bandai has ever done. So it receives my highest recommendation for that. And that will do it for me on reviewing the Den-gasher. I have one more video to do, and that will not involve Den-O, at least any more than it does any other Kamen Rider. And I will talk with all of you when I do that video. Alright, this has been Charles, and I'm out.